November 14th, 1976. The Las Vegas Hilton showroom. Elvis Presley is in the middle of transitioning from Burning Love to Hound Dog when a drunk voice cuts through the music. "You're a fake! Prove you're a real man!" 20,000 fans gasp as a man named Bobby Henderson, who'd go by Big Mike after this night, stands up challenging the king himself. Security rushes forward, but Elvis stops them with a raised hand. What happened in the next 15 minutes became one of the most legendary moments in rock and roll history, witnessed by everyone in that room and talked about for decades to come. Instead of having Big Mike thrown out, Elvis did something nobody expected. He turned the house lights up, invited the heckler on stage, and what followed was a masterclass in charisma, compassion, and pure Elvis magic. By the end of it, Big Mike was crying, the audience was offering him jobs, and everyone in that room witnessed why Elvis wasn't just called the king because of his voice. Stay with me, because what you're about to hear actually happened, and it's more incredible than any script could invent. Act 1. The Challenge. To understand what made this moment so powerful, you need to know where Elvis was in November 1976. This was late period Elvis, performing his grueling Las Vegas residency at the Hilton. He'd been doing 2 shows a night, and the pressure was immense. The man who'd revolutionized rock and roll was now fighting personal demons, health issues, and the exhausting schedule of being a living legend. But when he stepped on that stage, he was still the king. The showroom was packed with about 2,000 people, though the moment felt so big that witnesses would later claim it felt like 20,000. Elvis had just finished the high-energy Burning Love and was starting the intro to Hound Dog when Big Mike's voice rang out. According to people who were there, Big Mike shouted something like, "You're fake!" or "You're phony!" The exact words vary in different accounts, but the challenge was clear. Elvis stopped mid-song. The band fell silent. According to witnesses, there was a moment of stunned silence where nobody knew what would happen next. Big Mike, emboldened by alcohol and whatever personal pain he was carrying, kept going. "Prove you're a real man!" he shouted. Some accounts say he challenged Elvis to a fight. The tension in that room was unbearable. Security guards immediately moved toward Big Mike, ready to remove him. But Elvis, showing the kind of stage presence that made him a legend, held up his hand. "No, wait," he said. The guard stopped. Elvis walked to the edge of the stage, looking down at this drunk man who just disrupted his show. Instead of anger, Elvis's face showed curiosity, maybe even compassion. "What's your problem, man?" he asked. Big Mike, suddenly faced with Elvis Presley's direct attention, seemed to waver for a moment. But the alcohol kept him bold. He repeated his challenge in some form. According to the accounts, Elvis then made a decision that would define this entire moment. "You want to see if I'm real?" Elvis said, a slight smile playing on his lips. "All right, come up here." The crowd erupted in shocked murmurs. Elvis ordered the house lights turned up, flooding the entire showroom with light. This wasn't going to be some dark, hidden moment. He wanted everyone to see what happened next. Big Mike, perhaps not believing this was actually happening, made his way to the stage. He climbed up, swaying slightly, and stood face to face with Elvis Presley. The 2 men were about the same height, but the presence Elvis commanded made him seem larger than life. "You think I'm fake?" Elvis asked, his voice calm but firm. Then he did something that left the audience stunned. Elvis, who'd studied martial arts for years and was a serious karate practitioner, went into a fighting stance. The band started playing a drum rhythm, and Elvis began demonstrating his karate moves. This wasn't some silly display. Elvis moved with genuine skill and precision, his kicks and strikes perfectly timed to the drum beat. The crowd went wild. Here was Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll, proving his physical prowess to a drunk heckler with a karate demonstration in the middle of his Las Vegas show. But Elvis wasn't done. As he finished his demonstration, breathing slightly heavy, he looked at Big Mike with that famous Elvis grin. "Still think I'm fake?" he asked. The crowd laughed and applauded. Big Mike, clearly sobering up from the adrenaline and the surreal situation he'd put himself in, stammered something. Elvis, reading the room perfectly, decided to take this moment even further. Instead of sending Big Mike away humiliated, he was going to give him something else entirely. "You want to prove you're tough?" Elvis said. Let's see if you can sing." Elvis offered Big Mike a singing contest. He handed him a microphone and asked what he wanted to sing. According to various accounts, Big Mike, his mind foggy from alcohol and emotion, blurted out the only song he could think of, "My Way." It was one of Elvis's signature Vegas numbers, a Frank Sinatra classic. This was the ultimate Elvis move, turning a confrontation into a performance, giving his heckler not just attention but a genuine moment in the spotlight. The band started playing, and Big Mike, suddenly faced with singing in front of thousands with Elvis Presley standing next to him, tried his best. Act 2, the breakdown. Big Mike's attempt to sing My Way was, predictably, rough. His voice was unsteady, he couldn't quite hit the notes, and the alcohol wasn't helping. But something was happening on that stage that went beyond the singing. As Big Mike struggled through the lyrics, emotion started overtaking him. The bravado began cracking. According to witnesses, you could see the exact moment when Big Mike's anger dissolved into something else entirely. Elvis, instead of standing back and letting Big Mike fail, did something remarkable. He put his arm around the man's shoulders and started singing along with him, helping him through the song. Elvis's powerful voice filled in where Big Mike's faltered. It became a duet, but more than that, it became a moment of connection. The audience, which could have been cruel, started cheering them on instead. As they reached the emotional climax of My Way, Big Mike broke down completely. The tough guy act vanished, replaced by raw emotion. According to multiple accounts from people who were there, Big Mike started crying. He tried to keep singing, but the tears overtook him. Elvis, sensing the shift, stopped the song and let Big Mike speak. What came out was a flood of pain and frustration. Big Mike, through his tears and the microphone that was still live, started talking about his life. The specific details vary depending on who's telling the story, but the essence was consistent. He'd lost his job, he was going through heartbreak, maybe a divorce, and he was drowning in problems that felt insurmountable. He'd come to the show drunk and angry at the world, and Elvis just happened to be the target. It was a raw, human moment witnessed by thousands. Elvis listened, really listened. He didn't interrupt, didn't mock, didn't minimize Big Mike's pain. When Big Mike finished, Elvis pulled him into a genuine embrace. "I understand, brother," Elvis said, his own voice thick with emotion. "We've all been there. We've all had hard times." According to witness accounts, you could hear the sincerity in Elvis's voice. This wasn't an act. This was one human being connecting with another. Elvis then did something that turned the entire room into a unified force of compassion. He turned to the audience and, with the microphone still on, told them about Big Mike's situation. He didn't exploit it or sensationalize it. He simply stated that this man was going through a rough time and needed help. "He needs a job," Elvis said. "Can anyone here help him with that?" What happened next became one of the most remarkable parts of this story. People in the audience started shouting out, offering Big Mike jobs. According to various accounts, people offered him construction work, positions in their businesses, connections they could make. The Las Vegas crowd, which could be tough and jaded, showed their hearts. Big Mike, overwhelmed by this outpouring of support, cried even harder. Elvis, orchestrating this moment with the skill of someone who understood human nature deeply, kept the focus on compassion and community. He talked about how everyone deserves a second chance, how we're all struggling with something, and how a little kindness can change everything. The audience was completely captivated. This had gone from a concert to something more meaningful, a shared human experience. Some accounts suggest that Elvis made sure Big Mike got contact information from people offering help before he left the stage. Others say Elvis's own people followed up with Big Mike afterward. The exact details of what happened to Big Mike after that night vary in different tellings, and it's hard to separate fact from legend. But what's not in dispute is that Elvis treated this heckler with dignity and compassion when he could have destroyed him. Elvis eventually guided Big Mike off the stage to thunderous applause. The man who'd come up as a drunk heckler left as a human being who'd been seen, heard, and helped. As Big Mike disappeared backstage, Elvis turned back to his audience. The room was electric with emotion. Elvis, with perfect timing, said something like, "You're too drunk and I'm too pretty," with a laugh. breaking the tension and bringing the energy back to a place where he could continue the show. Act 3. The Legend and the Truth. Elvis launched back into his set with renewed energy, but the atmosphere had fundamentally changed. This wasn't just a Vegas show anymore. It was an event that everyone present would remember for the rest of their lives. According to people who were there, the rest of the concert had an intensity and connection that was different from any other Elvis show they'd attended. Something sacred had happened. The story of what happened that November night in 1976 didn't immediately make national headlines. This was before the internet, before viral videos, before moments could spread instantly around the world. But among Elvis fans, the story spread through word of mouth and witness accounts. People who were there told their friends, who told their friends. The story circulated in fan communities and became part of Elvis lore. Over the decades, the story has taken on a life of its own. Various tellings have added or changed details. Some versions have different names for the heckler, different songs, different resolutions. The exact sequence of events gets debated among Elvis historians. But the core truth remains consistent across all versions. Elvis Presley, when challenged by a drunk heckler, responded with grace, humor, and compassion instead of anger or humiliation. What makes this story resonate isn't just what Elvis did, but what it reveals about who he was. Late-period Elvis is often portrayed as a tragic figure, struggling with his weight, his health, and his demons. But this moment shows the Elvis that people who knew him always described: deeply spiritual, compassionate, and never forgetting where he came from. He treated Big Mike the way he'd want to be treated if their positions were reversed. The incident has been discussed in various Elvis biographies and documentaries, though it's not as famous as some of his other moments. But among serious Elvis fans and those who study his life, this night at the Las Vegas Hilton represents Elvis at his best. Not Elvis the performer, not Elvis the sex symbol, but Elvis the human being who used his platform to show kindness to someone who arguably didn't deserve it. In recent years, as clips and discussions of the incident have appeared on YouTube and social media, new generations have discovered this story. Comments on videos about it reveal how deeply it affects people. "This is the Elvis people don't know about," one comment reads. "This is real leadership," says another. The story resonates because it represents something we all aspire to: the ability to respond to hostility with grace. Some people question whether the details of the story are accurate, and that's fair. With decades of retellings and the nature of oral history, it's hard to know exactly what was said and done. What's not in question is that Elvis invited a heckler on stage, diffused the situation with charisma and compassion, and created a moment that people still talk about nearly 50 years later. The essence of the story is true, even if some specifics are debated. The Las Vegas Hilton, now the Westgate, still stands, and Elvis fans still make pilgrimages there. Some come specifically hoping to meet people who were at that November 14, 1976 show. The venue has seen countless performances before and since, but that night remains special in its history. A plaque or memorial commemorating the moment would be fitting, though as of now, the memory lives primarily in the hearts of those who were there, and in the stories they've passed down. What can we learn from this moment? Perhaps that our first instinct when faced with hostility doesn't have to be matching it with more hostility. Elvis could have had Big Mike thrown out in seconds. He could have humiliated him, destroyed him verbally, or simply ignored him. Instead, he chose to engage, to understand, and to help. That choice created ripples that are still being felt decades later. The story of Elvis and Big Mike Henderson at the Las Vegas Hilton in 1976 reminds us that greatness isn't just about talent or success. It's about character, about how you treat people when you have every right to treat them poorly. Elvis Presley had enough status and power in that room to destroy Big Mike with a word. Instead, he saved him with an embrace. That's not just the mark of a great entertainer. That's the mark of a great human being. And that's the real reason Elvis will always be the king.